Hello, welcome to the Black Ponder. I'm Neil Trotter. Today, we're going to be talking about everybody's favorite topic, and that's feminism. Wait. Don't turn off the video. I'm just playing. If you want to turn off the video, that's fine with me. It's a free country, right? Well, this video was produced in a free country, so, if you want to turn off the video, that's on you. But if you're still with me, if I haven't lost you yet, I would like to challenge you on your definition of feminism. What do you think feminism is, and where do you base that definition off of? Do you base it off very outspoken women on the internet who proclaim that it's time to rise up against the tyranny of male dominance and to show the superiority of all female qualities and demonstrate a thing or two to all men who are bastards and pigs and chauvinistic jerks? Is that what you base your definition of feminism on? Or do you base your definition of feminism off of maybe celebrity memoirs? I don't know, like Lena Dunham's Not That Kind of Girl, right? Or Amy Poehler's Yes. Is that what you base your definition of feminism on? Now, I'm not knocking those books. They're great memoirs, very entertaining, and they do have feminist themes in them. That's, I'm not denying that. But are you really going to get the core concepts of feminism with those books? Not sure about that. If you want to get the core concepts, then you got to go to the source material. You got to go to the classics. Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own is a classic feminist text. It is one of the foundational texts of feminism. So let's talk about A Room of One's Own, and together we can start to understand what feminism really means. It may be the case that what you think feminism is not exactly what indeed feminism is. It's interesting, when you bring up the word feminism, even the word, people get really angry. There's this immediate backlash, right? It's like one of the most offensive words in the English language almost, at least in my experience when I talk about feminism. And Virginia Woolf talks about that. Let me read you this quote. Why were they angry? For when it came to analyzing the impression left by those books, there was always an element of heat. This heat took many forms. It showed itself in satire, in sentiment, in curiosity, in reprobation. But there was another element which was often present and could not immediately be identified. Anger, I called it. But it was anger that had gone underground and mixed itself with all kinds of other emotions. To judge from its odd effects, it was anger disguised and complex, not anger simple and open. Why are there so many adverse, negative comments on YouTube videos about feminism or blog posts? What's the deal with that? Well, Virginia Woolf argues that it's because it's an attack on self-confidence. Here's quote number 2. Without self-confidence, we are as babes in the cradle. And how can we generate this imponderable quality, which is yet so invaluable, most quickly? By thinking that other people are inferior to oneself. By feeling that one has some innate superiority, it may be wealth or rank, a straight nose, or the portrait of a grandfather by Romney. For there is no end to the pathetic devices of the human imagination over other people. Hence the enormous importance to a patriarch who has to conquer, who has to rule, of feeling that great numbers of people, half the human race indeed, are by nature inferior to himself. It must indeed be one of the chief sources of his power. Virginia Woolf is arguing when you call somebody out on their discrimination, they get angry because it threatens their self-confidence, because that self-confidence is rooted in oppressing other people. You feel big and strong when you are superior and dominant over somebody else. And when somebody says, hey, wait a minute, you're not, we're equals here. What right do you have to tell me what I can and cannot do? Suddenly, that self-confidence is threatened, right? It's like, well, shut up. And I think that's true. I kind of relate that to when I make YouTube videos about philosophy and I have an interpretation of a philosopher that may be different than somebody else. Sometimes I'll get like a negative or adverse comment, and you can sense that the person is kind of threatened by my interpretation. They're like, oh, whoa, what's going on? Like, that's not how I felt about this philosopher. That's not how I thought what he was saying. That can't be right. Am I the one getting slow? No. There's no way. I know what I'm talking about. This guy, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's a dumbass on YouTube just saying stuff. No, I'm going to show him that I'm the one that's right. And there's like self-confidence being threatened there. I know, it kind of, to me, is along the same lines as that. So let's move past that, right? We're not trying to attack anybody's confidence here. We're trying to get to the root of what feminism is. What is the true definition? Well, to answer that, Virginia Woolf uses this hypothetical example of Shakespeare's sister. She says, look, if Shakespeare had a sister, and that sister had the exact same literary genius as Shakespeare, and she had the innate talent to write masterful plays like Shakespeare did, there's no way that sister would be able to be as successful as Shakespeare would. Check out quote number 3. It is unthinkable that any woman in Shakespeare's day should have had Shakespeare's genius. For genius like Shakespeare's is not born among laboring, uneducated, servile people. It was not born in England among the Saxons and the Britons. It is not born today among the working classes. How then could it have been born among women whose work began, according to Professor Trevelyan, almost before they were out of the nursery, who were forced to it by their parents and held to it by all the power of law and custom? It's true. When somebody's born with an innate gift, that gift needs to be fostered, right? It needs to be developed. They can't just ride off that talent alone. They have to be given the opportunity to develop and express that gift in society. It's important to understand that about Shakespeare. Sure, he was a masterful writer and he did have a lot of talent, but there's no way he would be able to write these great masterful works like Hamlet or Romeo and Juliet if he wasn't given the opportunity to read books when he was young, go to university, have an area where he can just write and just focus on his writing, a room of his own, right? And Virginia Woolf argues that, well, back in those days, women were not given all that stuff. Now, you might rebuttal everything that I just said with the fact that, well, in 2015, in the developed world at least, women do have the right to do that. So that's irrelevant, what you're saying. But I would like to say that you could expand that idea to not just gender equality, which is actually still an issue today, but it's not just about that. It's about equality based off of all types of identifiers: race, sexual orientation, religion, all these things. Take, for example, the whole gay marriage issue. That's a big deal right now in America because our Supreme Court just ruled that not allowing gay people to get married is unconstitutional. Therefore, it's legal in all 50 states. Let's say you had a gay person who had Shakespeare's literary genius. He had this innate gift to write masterful works. But then this gay person fell in love with somebody, but society did not allow that person to express his love for that person in its fullest extent. Society did not allow this person to marry this person that he loved. In that case, that person is going to go through all kinds of emotional angst and psychological turmoil that's going to distract him. He's not going to be able to focus on developing his talent. He's not going to be able to use his gift to contribute positively to society because he's so caught up in this emotional difficulty that's going on. He's not able to express himself emotionally. This person doesn't have the emotional room of his own, right? That's what I'm talking about. That's what feminism is about, I feel. It's about allowing all people the opportunity to develop their talents, to contribute to society, and acknowledging that there are these sociological blocks that are preventing people from doing that, and then doing something about that. One of my favorite TV shows is a news program, an interview program. It's called Charlie Rose. It's a great show. There's this very prominent journalist named Charlie Rose. He interviews all types of people, and it's very educational. Not too long ago, as of the taping of this video, he did a show about gender equality, but he focused on the neurological aspects of that. I'll link it down below because it's very fascinating and very educational. He brought in a panel of scientists, neurologists, psychologists, and other people in brain science. They talked about how the science is saying that in the brain, what makes people identify as male and what makes people identify as female is present in everyone. Both aspects are present in the brain. It's just that for people who identify more as male, that aspect is more predominant. And people who identify as female, that's more of a predominant aspect in the mind. But both parts are there. They're present. So there's very little difference between a male brain and a female brain. We move on to quote number 4. And I went on amateurishly to sketch a plan of the soul so that in each of us 2 powers preside, one male, one female. And in the man's brain, the man predominates over the woman. And in the woman's brain, the woman predominates over the man. The normal and comfortable state of being is that when the 2 live in harmony together, spiritually cooperating. If one is a man, still the woman part of the brain must have effect, and the woman also must have intercourse with the man in her. Coleridge, a famous writer that time, perhaps meant this when he said that a great mind is androgynous. It is when this fusion takes place that the mind is fully fertilized and uses all its faculties. Perhaps a mind that is purely masculine cannot create any more than a mind that is purely feminine, I thought. But it would be well to test what one meant by man womanly and conversely by woman manly, by pausing and looking at a book or 2. Coleridge certainly did not mean, when he said that a great mind is androgynous, that it is a mind that has any special sympathy with women, a mind that takes up their cause or devotes itself to their interpretation. Perhaps the androgynous mind is less apt to make those distinctions than the single-sexed mind. He meant perhaps that the androgynous mind is resonant and porous, that it transmits emotions without impediment, that it is naturally creative, incandescent, and undivided. In fact, one goes back to Shakespeare's mind as a type of androgynous of the man-womanly mind, though it would be impossible to say what Shakespeare thought of women. And if it be true that it is one of the tokens of the fully developed mind that it does not think specifically or separately of sex, how much harder is it to attain that condition now than ever before? It's very interesting what Woolf is saying. What she's saying is that success, truth even, lies in the ability to embrace both the masculine and feminine qualities within oneself. And that to say that one gender is dominant over the other, whether it's male or female, whichever one, you're limiting your ability to succeed. She's arguing that successful people are those who embrace both the masculinity and femininity. And that's what feminism is about. It's not about this man versus female, female versus bad, who's dominant, who's superior. It's not about that. Here's another quote. It is fatal for anyone who writes to think of their sex. It is fatal to be a man or woman pure and simple. One must be woman manly or man womanly. It is fatal for a woman to lay the least stress on any grievance, to plead even with justice any cause, in any way to speak consciously as a woman. And fatal is no figure of speech, for anything written with that conscious bias is doomed to death. It ceases to be fertilized. Brilliant and effective, powerful and masterful as it may appear for a day or two, it must wither at nightfall. It cannot grow in the minds of others. Some collaboration has to take place in the mind between the woman and the man before the act of creation can be accomplished. Some marriage of opposites has to be consummated. All this pitting of sex against sex, of quality against quality, all this claiming of superiority and inputting of inferiority belong to the private school age of human existence, where there are sides and it is necessary from one side to beat another side, and of the utmost importance to walk up to a platform and receive from the hands of the headmaster himself a highly ornamental pot. As people mature, they cease to believe in sides or in headmasters or in highly ornamental pots. So again, feminism isn't about this battle between the sexes. So don't base your definition of feminism off of people who just talk about that. It's about realizing that both feminine and masculine qualities are equally important and allowing each side equal opportunity to express their innate talents in a way that can contribute to society, whatever those talents may be. For a woman, it might not necessarily be homemaking, cooking, or raising children. For a man, it might not be working on a car, or sports, or other traditional male-dominated roles, right? It could be something completely different. But whatever it is, we need to allow a room of one's own for either side so that they can develop these talents into something useful. For my belief is that if we live another century or so, I am talking of the common life, which is the real life, and not of the separate lives which we live as individuals and have 500 a year each of us in rooms of our own. If we have the habit of freedom and courage to write exactly what we think, if we escape a little from the common sitting room and see human beings not always in their relation to each other, but in relation to reality, then the opportunity will come and the dead poet who was Shakespeare's sister will put on the body which she has so often laid down. A century from now, Virginia Woolf says. The original edition of this book was written in 1929. 2029, not that far away. Let's live in reality, shall we? Let's not base our decisions off of false definitions. If you want to know about something, you gotta read the source material. If you're somebody who considers yourself a feminist and you haven't read this book, shame on you. A Room of One's Own is a book that breaks down core feminist ideas, and you should read it to understand your ideology. And if you're a feminist critic, if you're somebody that's against feminism and you haven't read this book, then shame on you, because you might be criticizing points that have absolutely nothing to do with what feminism actually is. That's why it's important to read the classics. Sure, the classics refer to a time that was way back when, and some of it might not be accurate to today, right? Some of it might not be relevant, but the core ideas are still relevant. The original concepts still apply today. Feminism is about recognizing that equal opportunity is not given to everybody in a way that they can express their innate talents to contribute positively to society. It's not equally given because false definitions are applied to people. False roles are applied to people based off of one's race, creed, sexual orientation, social economic class, and gender. We gotta break away from these constructs that do not completely describe a person in their fullest extent, and we can't allow these constructs to completely define somebody, because in that way you limit somebody's ability to contribute to society. This is what true feminism is about. That's the message you're gonna get once you start reading classical feminist works like Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own. So I ask you, take responsibility for yourself and do your own research. You might be buying into something that's not actually related to the thing that you're buying into. Or you might be criticizing something that's not really aligned with the thing that you're criticizing. It's very important. Check out the classics. Be informed. Virginia Woolf, A Room of One's Own. It's a great book. It's got a lot of good ideas. Check it out. Well, you've been listening to The Black Ponder. Thank you for watching. Tune in next time for more philosophical thought.